welcome back to my YouTube channel after a short 5-day break. So I hope you have been doing very well. I also want to say how much I appreciate your kind comments and feedback. It really means a lot to me. Today I want to talk about a very unique and fascinating poet, Emily Dickinson. And I want to approach her poetry through a question that I find very powerful. How does Emily Dickinson write, and what is the relationship between silence and voice in her work? When we first read Dickinson, one of the things we immediately notice is how different her style is. Her poems are often short, fragmented, and full of dashes. The rhythm feels irregular and sometimes even incomplete. But I think this incompleteness is very intentional. Dickinson creates a poetic space where meaning is not fully explained. It is suggested, interrupted, and sometimes left in silence. And that's where the idea of silence becomes very important. In many ways, Dickinson writes not only with words, but also with what she doesn't say. The pauses, the dashes, the gaps, they all create a kind of silence that invites the reader to participate. As readers, we are not just receiving meaning, we are actively completing it. And this is what makes her poetry feel so intimate. At the same time, there is also a very strong sense of voice in her work. Even though her poems are quiet, they are not passive, right? There is powerful inner voice, questioning, observing, sometimes resisting. Dickinson often explores themes like death, immortality, nature, and the inner self. But she does this in a very inward, sometimes almost private way. It feels as if we are listening to someone thinking rather than speaking out loud. And I think this is where her originality lies. She transforms poetry into a space between expression and hesitation, between voice and silence. From a more academic perspective, we can also think about how Dickinson challenges traditional poetic forms. She doesn't fully follow the conventions of her time. Instead, she creates her own structure, one that reflects the complexity of thought and emotion. Her use of dashes, for example, can be seen as a visual and rhythmic representation of thinking itself, pauses, shifts, interruptions. So the poem becomes not just a finished product, but a process of thinking, feeling, and searching. And I think that's why Dickinson continues to be so relevant today. Because she reminds us that language is not always enough. And sometimes what is left unsaid can be just as meaningful as what is spoken. For me, reading Dickinson is very personal experience. It slows you down, it asks you to listen carefully, and it invites you into a quiet but very intense space of reflection. So, I'd love to hear from you now. How do you experience Emily Dickinson poetry? Do you find her style challenging, or do you enjoy that sense of openness and ambiguity? Thank you again for all your beautiful comments and feedbacks. I truly appreciate it. And I'll see you in the next episode. Bye!